Welcome to the Sober Boozers Club podcast, a place where we can talk openly and honestly about addiction, sobriety, and strangely enough, beer. I'm Ben, I'm an alcoholic, and for the last 2 years I've been sampling some of the finest alcohol-free beers the world has to offer. Each week, I'll be joined by a different guest to discuss their own lived experiences on all things related to the world of low and no alcohol beverages. So pour yourself a tipple, relax, and let me welcome you to the Sober Boozers Club. In today's episode, I talked to Andy Mee, who is the founder and owner of the Alcohol-Free Drinks Company. Now, the Alcohol-Free Drinks Company provide a range of excellent alcohol-free options to members of the public and to the industry. And we talk a little bit about that, as well as kind of breaking down Andy's own sobriety journey. Now, it's well known that Andy can talk about beer forever, so I was really looking forward to this episode and just being able to talk all things industry related. So let's go over to him right now. So Andy, hello, how are you today?
Ben, I'm excellent. I'm really good. Just recovering from a big trade show in Manchester last week and all of the fallout and follow-up and all that kind of stuff. So
I was going to say, You've been a busy man from what I gather.
Yes, yeah.
So how was the trade show? How did you find it?
Excellent, actually. What was fantastic is when I did my first trade show, I started the company in July of 21, and I did my first trade show in March of 22, which was the same trade show, Northern Restaurant and Bar, called NR&B. Mm-hmm. So I'm there as this naive guy who'd not been from the drinks industry, really very, very new to the whole thing. And I'm stood there literally trying to pull people on my stand. And the conversations, there would be a lot of people who would walk past. I have a motivation, and I will share this with you fairly early on. And it happened at NR&B in 2022. I was setting up, and I won't say from the company, but they are a major drinks distributor in the UK, obviously alcoholic drinks. And these two guys in their matching polo shirts and their lanyards stood by the edge of my stand as I was putting it together on the Monday. And one turned to the other and just said, "What's the fucking point in that?" No. And bizarrely, it actually it created in me a sense of, I'll tell you what, mate, I will show you what the fucking point in this is. Yeah. And it provides me, because I'm fairly unique in what I do have some B2C business, but my primary function is really trying to spread the word in the on-trade and promote a choice in venues where people go. You and I as sober people, you and I both know that it's so frustrating that we go out and there's just nothing to drink. And
you've got big alcohol companies, or you've got orange juice quite often.
Yes,
and
exactly.
It makes you not want to go out anywhere, doesn't it?
Exactly. Well, my wonderful friend Janet Hadley, she gave me this T-shirt at Christmas.
So and it says blue is not a choice.
Yes, exactly. And that's kind of how I feel about it, And so, the show was fantastic because 2 years from the very first one, I've actually just had streams and streams of people saying, "Oh my God, everybody's asking for it now."
Yeah.
So it went well.
Have you seen a massive improvement, or I say improvement, but have you seen more people be interested in what you're doing?
Very much so.
Is it very noticeable, would you say?
Well, and from a business perspective, I've doubled my turnover every year, and I've already achieved in the first 6 months of this financial year. My financial year starts in August. Yeah, I've already achieved what I achieved in the whole of last year. Wow. And I've got another 5.5 months to go.
Yeah.
And it's what's been interesting as well from my business perspective is people who would order 1 or 2 cases are now ordering 2 or 3 cases, or the breadth of range started to get bigger. Yeah. Wonderful customers. I've got some fabulous customers who would maybe a year or so ago, even a year or so, but certainly when I started focusing on the trade, they would take a beer and perhaps a cider and a bottle of gin alternative.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing that people are starting to understand. I mean, something you know very well with your wonderful alter ego that you have on the what people don't understand is the breadth of flavors in alcohol-free beer are as good as, if not frankly better than the alcoholic world.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got, one of our favourites being Mash Gang. I mean, you look at what Jordan produces there. They're not kids' drinks. They're not soft drinks. They are truly an adult flavour.
Mm-hmm.
And you get such a breadth of flavours that actually challenge you sometimes. You go, oh, actually, yeah, is that something that you're not used to it? I mean, I'm sober 3 years now, so it is slightly different in a way to compare. But it's one of those where you go, I'm constantly surprised by, wow, somebody's done this. Yeah, and
the breadth of flavors that you kind of discover. I'm drinking more beer now than I ever drank when I was a drinker. And I've got into conversations myself with people where I will talk about beer and say to, let's call him Steve down the pub. So you like beer, do you? And he goes, yeah, I like beer. And I say, oh, have you tried any alcohol-free beers? Do you like them? No, don't like them. And it's kind of, well, you don't like beer then, do you?
Yeah, well, exactly.
You like alcohol, and that's fine if you like alcohol. I mean, it's problematic, but don't claim to be a beer fan if you don't enjoy alcohol-free beer, especially when so many of them are made in exactly the same way now.
Absolutely. Well, I keep saying to people, when they say, oh, you've stopped drinking, I say, I haven't stopped drinking. I still drink beer. I was out with some wonderful friends over the weekend watching the rugby, and we went to a pub and got into conversation with one of these guys, and he was like, oh, so you've stopped drinking? I said, no, I haven't stopped drinking at all. I drink some fantastic beer. I just happen to drink beer without alcohol. That's it. I have a little story for you. I went to a trade event at a very, very well-known theme park in this country.
Okay.
And I took the wonderful Colbath Brewery 1571, and Jim's got a Linda machine, so it enables me to promote draft beer, which is frankly the way forward. It's such a game changer.
You don't need to preach that to me. I'm already converted.
So I gave the head of bars for this particular theme park. He was helping me unload. I was doing this big exhibition, and he helped me unload. And he was like, "Oh, I don't really get it." And I said, "Look, let me just set up, and let me give you a pint." And so I poured him a pint of 1571, and he put it to his lips, and he took it again, and he put it down, and he just went, "You're fucking with my head." And I said, "Oh, I hope in a good way." He said, I can't believe this.
Yeah.
I can't believe that this is an alcohol-free beer." And I said, "Well, probably because all you've ever drunk is the over-pasteurized blue label product."
Yes, straight from a bottle or a can in a lukewarm fridge.
Yeah,
and it tastes awful.
Yeah. Whereas, it is a game changer. My best performing pub is a wonderful pub up in Hebden Bridge called the Fox and Goose.
Yeah.
And I got a permanent tap in the Fox and Goose probably about 18 months ago. And it would take normally about a month to get through a 30-litre keg. And it is, to be fair, it is their 10th anniversary this coming weekend. But I just delivered 3 kegs off to them last Friday.
Wow.
My local rugby club, the wonderful guys at Weatherby Rugby Club, I was providing them with cans and bottles. And in August of last year, I managed to get on draft. They gave me a tap. I put Jim's 1571 on, and it took about a month to get through the first one.
Yeah.
And the last delivery I had was 2 50-litre kegs. So that's 100 litres of alcohol-free beer on draft in a rugby club a month.
And that as well, and I don't mean to sound controversial, but you wouldn't stereotypically put a rugby club down as a place where you would sell an alcohol-free beer. That's the kind of place that I go to with my dad. And think, I'm in for a Beck's Blue here. It's kind of what what I've come to expect, and to an extent, I've had to accept that as just a part of life.
Yeah.
But of course, it doesn't have to be like that, as
No.
you've just proven.
Well, I think as well, what's happening. I mean, I used to play sport. You wouldn't know it from my svelte figure now, but I used to love a game of hockey.
Yeah.
And the rite of passage, probably, let's say 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, you just got behind the wheel of a car and you just, and I'm not proud of the times and I'm not seeking any form of forgiveness for it. But, you'd go away games, the jugs would get poured round. You had no idea actually how much you were drinking. And now much more consciousness goes into it.
Yeah.
I'm having a big push on golf clubs at the moment, because I always say to them, no one walks to a golf club. So forgetting anything to do with people like us, Ben, who are on a sober journey, let's start calling out to drivers who are visiting rugby clubs. For every sports game that happens at any sports ground in this country, be it football, be it cricket, be it rugby or hockey or whatever, there's an away team, and the away team go home in a car. So call it out. Give people a brilliant choice of alcohol-free beer. Get one tap. I mean, in terms of the on cost for any venue, putting a keg of alcohol-free beer on says to them, hey, we're being responsible. We know that a lot of you will drive. And put a beer on. Put a beer on that they can drink.
You're right, because that's as well when it becomes a very serious matter, isn't it? When we're not just talking about your stereotypical alcoholics who will, have a drink and get absolutely ruined every time they do. When we address these people, like you say, traveling away fans, etc. That's a dangerous situation, isn't it? Potentially,
absolutely.
You can really impact with alcohol-free beer. It's something that I've not really thought about, to be honest. Well,
I think the thing as well, Ben, that what happens if again we can break down these stereotypes and people can understand that these beers taste brilliantly, we will then see a further rise in flexi-drinking. And to me, flexi-drinking, again, aside of people like us who are on a sober journey for whatever reason, flexi-drinking is where the mass market will actually start to grow. And the more we encourage flexi-drinking, the more there'll be choice. And the more choice there is, it benefits all of us for whatever reason that we're not drinking alcohol. And the flexi drinkers, and they are very much in the younger end of the spectrum, they will drive this. And if the drivers... I went to a trade show last year up in Scotland, and Scotland's drink drive laws are much stricter than they are here in England. And coined the phrase when I was talking to people about the spend per car. So the spend per car to leisure and hospitality, and leisure and hospitality is under fire from so many different ways. 509 pubs closed in this country last year, and 167 of those were demolished or turned into houses, so they will never come back. So you've got these pubs, these community hubs and places where people would socialise. And in Scotland, what's happening is they coined, or one guy coined the phrase to me, look, there's only 3 Diet Cokes any driver will have. And they'll have one when they turn up, they'll have one as they're looking at the menu, and one during the meal. And then what will happen is they'll be looking at their watch going, come on, drink up. And that's, again, where the spend per car for a leisure and hospitality venue increases by the fact that they can offer something that the driver wants to drink. It's not rocket science.
No.
And the credit card of anybody who wants a beer for whatever reason that without alcohol is exactly the same as somebody who wants a pint of Stella. When I mentioned I was out with a bunch of friends over at the weekend, and I made a point of having tap water in the curry house that we went to, because the only thing they got was Heineken Zero. And that's not a choice. When the alcohol drinkers amongst them, they had choices of Cobra, Kingfisher, a couple of other non-Indian style lagers, and
Yeah.
a whole back bar, anything. And for me, and I always walk into a venue and I say, "What's your choice of alcohol free?" And that's where the T-shirt came from, because I always coin the phrase that when you say, "What's your choice of alcohol free?" and they come back and say Beck's Blue, I say that's not the question I asked you.
Yeah.
I said, "What is your choice of alcohol free?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of these factors are really starting to come together. And I mean, I absolutely, as you know, Ben, you and I have had a chat a couple of times. I absolutely love what I do. I love championing the independent producers, because these are people who are really, really trying and really want to
passionate about what they do, and
exactly.
craft beer as well, and craft beer that is just so happens to be alcohol free.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing, isn't it?
And also meeting brewers, the like of Jim up at Colbath. He's got a full suite of alcoholic beers, but his head brewer is as passionate about his non-alc, and he took nearly 2 years to get it right.
Yeah.
And when you talk about there where they've got, he's probably got about 12 or 14 different alcoholic beers, but he's as passionate about his non-alc. Another wonderful guy I deal with his name's Boz, and he owns Burton Road Brewery in Cheadlehume in Manchester.
Yes. Yeah.
And Boz is the non, and he actually gave me the first canned lager at NR&B. A lovely citrusy lager. And Boz has worked really hard on that.
Yeah.
Product. This isn't just a tick box exercise, and that's where you see so many of the alcoholic brewers who are brewing the non-alc, and it's not just a tick box exercise. For some of them they are, and I've been given some samples of stuff where I've had to politely go, well, there's not quite a gap in my range for that at the moment. And actually, the truth of it is, frankly,
it's
you've done.
It's
not up to scratch.
You can tell, can't you, when it's not?
Yeah.
When, like you say, it's a tick box, and I do understand in January companies releasing a non-alc beer because it's tough in hospitality at the moment, and I understand that from a corporate sense, but it doesn't mean that I want to drink it.
Exactly. But what's also exciting is there's some stuff like Northern Monk have just released their third hop porter, Abbeydale Brewery down in Sheffield. They've now got 3 in their portfolio as well. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing the rise in alcohol free actually developing some different products within beers and spirits too. But
I think this is the thing. It's becoming its whole adult drinks are becoming such an industry, from companies like Liquid Death. It's just water. It's just water. It's dash water for the working class. It's brilliant. But I think the growth of the industry is just, as we said earlier, it helps everyone because more options are only a good thing. Whether you're sober or whether you're on antibiotics. I say this all the time, on antibiotics, whether you're sober, whether you're the designated driver. The growth of the industry is only a good thing, and I feel like, and I might be wrong here, I hope I'm not, but I feel like we're only starting to scratch the surface.
And it's also venues properly embracing it. So one of the main things I struggle with is things like weddings or business meetings or balls or whatever, where you go in and they're stood there with a tray and it's a glass of fizz, and you say, I'm alcohol free, what have you got? Or we might be able to find you an orange juice, hold on a second. Mm-hmm. And I always say to venues, look, it costs you next to nothing to stand there with 2 trays, glass of fizz, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you've welcomed these people into your venue. You've given anybody, for whatever reason, and one of the main ones for alcohol-free fizz is pregnant ladies who want that glass of fizz. There's a lot of ladies who don't want anybody to know in the first 3 or 4 months that they are actually pregnant.
Very good.
And they like to take a glass of fizz. And you'll have had it. I've only ever done one wedding since being sober, and toasting the bride with the orange juice of shame when there's the alcoholic over there.
Yeah.
It's like it's just
It may as well be in a brown bag, mightn't it?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But,
so more
but you
choice.
are right. It's there's something nice about going to a bar and ordering that's a low life rather than saying, "Can I have the alcohol-free beer, please?"
Yeah.
Because just uttering that sentence instantly for me is a little bit triggering, because it's kind of a reminder of what you are as an alcoholic. And it's kind of like, I'm trying not to be that guy at the moment. I'm trying to just be out and not be reminded that, well, remember, you can't drink alcohol because you've been a naughty boy.
Yeah.
And just seeing, having Colt on tap from Mash Gang, being like, pint of Colt, please.
Yeah.
It just feels great, because even brands like Lucky Saint are associated with, staying away from alcohol to an extent. It's kind of the sober man's drink, Lucky Saint. It feels like. So there's still almost that stigma with Lucky Saint. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Really, because it's just.
Well, there's a lot of reasons I don't stock Lucky Saint, and I shan't. I shan't go into them, but there's a lot of reasons. But I think with like, if any of your podcast listeners ever find themselves in Harrogate, I implore you to go to Jim's. Jim's got a microbrewery, and it's called the Coalbath Clubhouse.
Okay.
And on the wall, you've got all of his beers. And 1571 is there the same. It comes in a Coalbath glass. It's exactly the same. Yeah. There's no issues about it. I'll have a pint of 1571. And you've got a pint in your hand, and you're socialising exactly the same way. Mm-hmm. There's no issues, and so on. It's
So in terms of, obviously, we touched upon Lucky Saint, and we won't go any further into that. But in terms of big alcohol, what more do you think that they can be doing, or do you think that they should be doing more for their alcohol free, or would you like them to just stay the fuck away from it? And
frankly, a lot of it.
Real brewers.
I feel that, and why I'm actually so passionate about what I do. Okay, so I've been a social drinker all my life. I've been in sales and marketing all my life, and to the best of my knowledge, no chairman of Diageo ever stood behind me with my arm up my back trying to force a pint down me.
Yeah.
But I just feel like the way at which big drinks industry was allowed to go, frankly, unchecked into pushing everything, and it really came to me in my first Christmas, my first sober Christmas, which was Christmas 21, and I kind of stepped back and went, Jesus Christ, literally, that was, Christmas was not about the drinks industry. It wasn't about. I walked into my local Sainsbury's about 3 or 4 weeks before that Christmas, met with this wall of alcohol, and every time, and there is a television behind me, as you can see. I don't really get much time to watch it, but to sit and watch commercial television or stuff, mainly stuff on commercial television, and the plethora of advertising that went into it. And there was one, it was like for an Irish whiskey, and it pushed the glass into the camera, and I'm going, wow,
it's everywhere, isn't it?
It's everywhere. And that's where I hope is not a strategy, but hope is probably more the word, that actually people understand big drinks is big drinks. And, I've never been a conspiracy theorist kind of person, but, and it's quite a big but, any government around the world, and I won't go into UK politics specifically, but any government around the world tolerates a carcinogenic, poisonous substance in alcohol that, classified by the World Health Authority, is exactly the same as asbestos in ethanol.
Yeah.
And they allow alcohol. I mean, the budget happened last week, and it was this big thing. The Chancellor has not increased alcohol duty. Oh my God, what a hero.
Yeah.
It's like, what the actual fuck, really? Because drinks are seen as a reward. They're seen as I stopped listening to Radio 2 when I gave up drinking alcohol, because I just got so fed up with this whole thing, particularly on a Friday night, of the DJs talking about, take the cork out of a bottle of something, or you survived the week, or whatever.
Reward yourself, treat
yourself.
yourself.
Reward yourself with a drink.
Yeah.
And that is all predicated by big drinks. Mm-hmm. And big drinks have not only produced these massive machine, vehicle, call it what you will, that pushes itself onto people and has created a society where if you don't drink alcohol, you're seen as weird.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you and I both,
no other drug, would it?
No. And I smoked for about, 30 odd years of my life.
Yeah.
And when I gave up, no one stood there with a pack of Marlboro trying to stuff one in my face. But you got that, as well. You get that, go on, you can have one.
Yeah.
What's the matter with you? Can you not just have, you can't control it?
And it's so dangerous, isn't it? Because then you start thinking, this is how I know I'm an alcoholic, for example, is that I truly feel like I could probably have a pint now and not go back to it. But that feeling of that kind of, that confidence that I have in myself to be able to have a pint and never want to drink alcohol again afterwards shows me that I can't have a pint.
Yes.
Because I've already tricked myself into having one. I've already done it mentally, which is exactly why I never can.
Exactly. But also as well, and I said to a close friend of mine who asked the questions of me, and I said, but fundamentally today, I don't want, the word want is actually quite a strong word in this instance. I don't want a pint with alcohol in it. I don't need a pint with alcohol in it. I can have, fundamentally, the pub that we were in on Saturday to watch all of the rugby, they had about 4 different beers plus Guinness Zero. And I was kind of fine with that. That was okay. Had they have had one on draft, I'd have had a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's that word want. I've got to a point where, and I think everybody does in their sobriety journey, however long that may be, they get to a point where they can recognize exactly what you've just said there, Ben. Yeah, I think I probably could. But I kind of got to that point. I went, but fundamentally, I don't want to.
You don't want to, yeah. You become somebody that just doesn't drink, don't you? You're not somebody that's trying not to drink anymore.
Yes, exactly.
It sounds cliche, but you're not trying to avoid alcohol. You just don't drink.
Exactly. And I go to pubs. I sat in a pub from 1:00 in the afternoon until after the England game on Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to avoid it. I just don't want to do it. James Corden famously has just gone sober.
Yeah.
When I saw his interview, he was saying about he used to borrow forward hours when he was drinking. And it was almost like he would borrow forward a few hours to have a few pints.
Yeah.
And when he gave up was when he realised he was borrowing a whole day.
Yeah.
And he was going out on a night and it was quite a bender, and he would borrow forward that whole day to literally sit on the sofa and do nothing. And that, when you, I think as well, and I might be a little bit controversial with this one, Ben, and excuse me if it triggers some of your listeners. We've been told as alcoholics or recovering alcoholics or whatever, we've been downtrodden and we're, you've been bad. And you said it yourself a moment ago. You've been bad, look at what you've done, all this kind of stuff. And, I'm now divorced. I have 2 children who sadly hardly have much to do with me and all of that. And I am not proud of the person I was in 2020.
Yeah.
However, I'm not a bad person. No. I'm actually somebody who can now sit in my own skin and go, do you know what? I'm quite proud of myself.
Yeah.
And I've stopped, and I've stopped and I don't want to go forward. And it's the it's almost like the constant lambasting of somebody who, and I'm not saying I've never done AA, and I've not done the steps and all that kind of stuff, but the living in the past of, and I saw a documentary on it, and there was a fella there who'd been 30 years in recovery, and he still went to every week, and that's cool, that's great, he gets the support.
Yeah.
But I thought, you're talking about a person who doesn't exist and hasn't existed for 30 years. I used to hide wine bottles. I used to take the empties and put them in the spare wheel section of the car so I could take them to the bottle bank and all that kind of stuff. A deceitful person.
Yeah.
And I'll call it out. I was deceitful, and I was angry. I was an angry shit who used to shout, and my daughter explained it that my tell was the door handle. If I was in a bad mood, it was I'd go through the door and all that. And particularly, lockdown, myself and my ex-wife owned a chain of indoor soft play centres, and we obviously were shut down during lockdown, and
of course,
that kind of stuff. And that's where it really affected me. But I'm not that person anymore.
No.
And I'm a very, very different person. And I have a different outlook on life. I think that the joy of sobriety should be celebrated, not lambasted. And it's where, Hannah's wonderful Sober Butterfly Collective just comes into its own. The ability to find people who you can chat to at any time, who just have been there.
Yeah.
And it's not judgmental.
Nobody will understand it unless they've done it. I mean, people can sympathize, and the people that are closest to you can sympathize, but no one will understand what it is like unless you've done it. And you're right. I think the most important thing is to forgive yourself, and that's not to take away any accountability.
No.
The difficult thing, isn't it? Because I had the same, like I can joke about it now, because if I didn't, I'd cry and say, I was awful. I was a shit. But I always felt, and inherently, I felt like I wasn't a bad person.
Yeah.
But then why did I keep acting like a bad person? And why did it keep happening? And then by eliminating the alcohol, I can say to myself now, I'm not a bad person. I mean, sometimes I do bad things, but so does everybody.
Yes, exactly.
But
I went the wrong way. I drove the wrong way round a roundabout today. It's. But you're absolutely right, and actually, Ben, it's a very telling statement that you just made, and you're right. And for anybody who is listening to your podcast, forgive yourself. I can't change it. And the one mantra that I absolutely love about AA is one day at a time. Today I will not drink. And I believe that as a mantra is magic, because I can't do anything about, particularly, the second half of 2020. I just wasn't a great person to live with, and I don't seek forgiveness for that. But today, I'm just a very different person, and I am proud of it, and I have forgiven myself. And I turned 3 years sober. What are we today? I turned 3 years sober 12 days ago.
Amazing.
And 3 years sober. It's like, wow.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I turned 61 last year. So for mental arithmetic, let's say that's 5% of my life. If you think about my adult life, it's a larger percentage. Yeah. And if you'd have said to me at any point prior to that, you'll spend. I mean, let's hope I'm around for another 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And if I can lie on my deathbed and go, do you know what? Actually, I spent half of my life sober. I'll be bloody proud of myself.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's important to celebrate the little wins. Like, I've been quite open in how sobriety isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not all, you don't wake up with clear skin and want to go to the gym and want to do all of this, but
no, you get addicted to chocolate bloody biscuits is what happens. And
yeah, you do.
I'm heavier now than I was when I used to drink.
For me, it's Belgian buns. I can't go a day without a Belgian bun. And it's always when I get home from work, and if I don't have any, the kind of dread sets in. Like, when you didn't have any beer in, that's what happens to me if I don't have Belgian buns in the cupboard. I start to, and I get the shakes and all sorts. So I know if I went to a doctor now, it would be, you need to cut down on sugar, and then it would be coffee, and then it would be one thing after another. That's what sobriety is, just realizing that gradually anything fun in your life gets taken away from you.
Well, sadly, we have an addictive nature. I mean, thank God I never got into gambling, because I would be in real trouble.
Into that a little bit, but I got really into the fruit machines, and I got into the fruit machines because when I went to the pub on my own, if nobody was free, I didn't want to be stood at the bar looking like, ironically, an alcoholic. So then I can remember the day I gave my parents my bank cards. I said, I need you to look after these because otherwise I'm going to keep taking money out. So I was always very aware of it. I was just reluctant because I was unhappy, I suppose.
But then, Ben, that goes back to the societal pressure. The societal pressure of that environment was that you should be drinking, you should be social. Now, what I think is exciting, and I'll give you kind of my vision of where things will go in the future.
That was my next question. That's outrageous.
Hey, I talk about the 50-50 concept. Okay. And the 50-50 concept is a place, and we'll call it a pub, but it's more of a proper kind of community hub. And the 50-50 concept is it will have a range of things to drink. Mm-hmm. And the range will be roughly 50% alcoholic and 50% non-alcoholic. And the 50% that's non-alcoholic isn't necessarily just the fantastic stuff that I sell. It will be things like kombucha on draft. It will be bubble tea. It will be an environment where there's a brilliant coffee machine and a good barista. It'll be, I've got 2 customers who are vinyl record shops, as well as one is a truly alcohol-free bar in Camden Market. And there'll be experiential retail, and it'll be a bit of tasting, and it'll be like Kevin does at the Functional Drinks Club, and he does kimchi making as well of an evening, and it'll just be a place to go and chill out with friends. And if you want to have a pint of Stella, you can have a pint of Stella, but if you actually want a decent pint of 1571 or Guinness or Zero or whatever, there's no pressure on you to have to do that. And these venues will have more things that will stop you having to go to the fruit machine and spend half your money on the turn of a wheel. There'll be places where people will just go and socialise and I bloody well hope they will, because the flip side of it is this insular nature which humans are becoming, doing, all the social media stuff and people not actually interacting. And look at any bus that goes past you on the street, everybody's got headphones on, all got their head down, and people are just not socializing. And I think there will be this movement towards these, I'd like to think of them as like community places. They'll probably still be pub-like, and they'll do some food, and they'll also do a selection of food through vegan and gluten-free, but there just won't be an issue about it. People, too many times, there's too many labels on things. But they're just going to be really kind of chilled out, relaxed places where people will go. And that I believe to be the future. And I know there are a number of alcohol-free bars, and they're great. And they, I sell into a few of them. But longer term, to me, the establishment that says we're totally over here is almost elitist the other way.
Yeah. I can see that.
It's just
we want like you say, community spaces, or I want to be able to go to a boozer, for example. I
Yeah,
want to go to a proper boozer and it just not be weird that I don't drink. And
yeah,
some people
exactly.
might, like you say, want to go to their nice like jazz bars
Yeah,
and be able to. And I think it's options, isn't it? It's options.
exactly. Well, I have a great customer in Manchester called the Frog and Bucket Comedy Club, and
Nice.
they put on a fabulous range of alcohol free now. And they give a great choice for anybody who doesn't want to imbibe alcohol.
Hmm.
They're going for the comedy. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
They're not going to get pissed. And I'm proud of the fact that until I went in, they really didn't have any alcohol free at all. They
Wow.
literally had one blue label product, and now they have RTD cocktails. They have the wines. They have some of the a good selection of the beers. And it's just great to know that people they're not pressured there. They can have whatever they want.
Well, it's nice on an individual level as well. And I certainly don't get it often, but I get it occasionally where people will reach out and say, what you do has really helped me. And I mean, certainly what you're doing has bloody helped a lot of people. Like there's places that I probably keep in business because they sell a good alcohol-free option.
Yeah.
So if you think of all of the places that you work with, it's
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing. It really is.
Yeah, and I started my company when I was 58 years old, and I'm now 61, and I absolutely love it. I wish I was your age. I wish I could go back to do it now, because I honestly believe, and going back to your question earlier about big drinks, they will continue to drive most of the venues in this country into their own label product because they own the distribution channel.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't know is that most of the pubs are supplied by Matthew Clark. Matthew Clark is owned by a company called C&C, and C&C is owned by Diageo. So you can pretty much guess which are the products that they will be pushing. And so that's where, my goal was to set up an independent channel for independent producers or people who were producing their one non-alc into the market. So, yeah, and I love it. And I love talking about it. I will bore the arse off anybody who chooses to. The WhatsApp group for my friends on Saturday was things to talk to Andy about after you've had 5 pints, because the constant thing that I will not backwards in coming forwards in telling them what I think.
Yeah.
But I just love it. And I if we can release the stigma, if we can stop sober shaming and increase choice, I genuinely believe that society will be a better place.
Andy, thank you very much for coming and talking to me. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing for the industry, and long may it continue.
Oh, thank you, Ben. And you too, man. I mean, just really great.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Sober Boozers Club podcast. My name is Ben Gibbs. You can find me on the Instagram at Sober Boozers Club. You can find Andy at Alcohol Free Drinks Company, and really do check that out because they do some amazing beers from independent breweries, and that's what we like to see. So go and treat yourself, enjoy yourself, and thank you again very much for listening. I'll be back with you very, very soon. But for now, go get a bloody beer. You've earned it. Alcohol free, of course.